Punctuation for kids. Hey kids, have you ever thought about punctuation? You know, really sat and thought about it. Probably not, but we have. You'll be surprised to find out that there's a lot more to punctuation than you may have thought. In fact, punctuation is a whole lot more than just dots and marks. Today, we're going to walk you through the finer points of punctuation. Let's start with the most obvious punctuation, when it ends a sentence. If you've ever read, well, anything, you'll see that all sentences end with either a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point. Whatever punctuation ends a sentence tells you a lot about how that sentence should be read and understood. The ending punctuation marks tell you to stop, but they also tell you if the sentence is a statement, a question, or if the words should be said with emotion. They also prevent run-on sentences. Let's start with our old friend, the period. That simple dot at the end of the last word of a sentence tells you a lot. It's used at the end of statements or commands to signal the thought is over. When you read or say a sentence with a period, it should be read with little emotion, as you're usually just imparting information. The dog chased the cat down the street. We are having pizza for dinner. Please make your bed. Close the door when you leave. Of course, that doesn't mean you should say it like a robot. That wouldn't sound right. Close the door when you leave. Then there's the question mark. You'll find this curvy-looking punctuation at the end of sentences when the author is seeking out information or is curious about something. Where is my coat? Do you think the snow will cause the school to be canceled today? What are we having for dinner tonight? Do you like this new shirt I'm wearing? Each of those sentences is seeking out information from the listener or reader, and they are said and read in a different way than sentences that end with a period. Then you've got the exclamation point. Yes! I love exclamation marks! Woohoo! These cool-looking punctuation marks are used when you want to express a lot of emotion in your sentence, such as, "Help me!" or "The game was amazing!" or "This is the best ice cream I've ever had." Sometimes you can even use both a question mark and an exclamation point if you have a question to ask and you happen to be really angry or excited about it at the same time. Like, "Didn't I tell you to go to your room?" Or, "Can you believe it snowed 2 feet last night?" Okay, so now you know about punctuation that ends sentences. But what about punctuation that's found in the middle of sentences? There's a lot more to know about the marks, points, and dots that populate our world. We know what periods, question marks, and exclamation points mean, but what about commas, quotation marks, apostrophes, semicolons, colons, dashes, and parentheses? Here's a quick chart that explains what each of these is for. Commas are used to indicate a pause within a sentence, or if the author is listing things. Quotation marks indicate that the author is using someone else's words in a sentence or telling us what someone said. Quotation marks open at the beginning of the quote and at the end of the quote when the quote is done. Semicolons are used to separate two closely related clauses within a sentence. Colons are used when you want the reader to take notice that you're about to provide a list of items, a quotation, or an explanation in a sentence. Dashes set off information more dramatically than a comma. And parentheses are used to indicate extra information that you've put into a sentence that's not really necessary to a sentence. If you didn't include it, the sentence would still be understood. There are also ellipses, which are these, sometimes called ... They indicate that there might be more to say or write, but you've chosen not to write or say it now. All capital letters in a sentence indicate yelling. And then there are apostrophes, used for a possessive, like John's book or Kelly's hair. Phew, that's a lot of punctuation. So in addition to telling us what kind of sentence it is, and to help us understand what we're reading, punctuation can also be used for effect, or to help the reader feel what they're reading or hearing. When you hear certain words, they can cause positive or negative feelings. Words mean one thing to someone and a different thing to someone else. The punctuation used in a sentence can help the writer or speaker guide the reader or listener towards feeling what they intended them to feel. If you write or say, "Oh no, the dog got out," using a period to end the sentence, it might not make you take action or feel any emotion. But if you use exclamation points instead, "Oh no, the dog got out!" now you're more interested and engaged. That's the effect of punctuation. It tells you that the writer or speaker of the sentence is really upset, and you should be too. Using punctuation for effect is used by all great writers to help their readers feel the story or information they're telling. The action comes alive, and you feel as though you're actually there during a conversation. All punctuation marks can be used for effect. Ending with a question mark is different than ending with a period, which is also different than ending with an exclamation point. But punctuation for effect can also be used in the middle of a sentence too. Take the comma. When used in a sentence, it can let you know that the author wants you to take a breath. It can tell you to slow down, not stop, but slow down so you can really understand the conversation and the action taking place. Using commas instead of periods can also keep action moving, as opposed to making the action seem like it's stopping and starting. Here's a great example of the effect commas can have. The little boy woke up late. He jumped down the steps and ran out the door. He jumped on his bike and rode to school. He parked there and locked his bike. He ran to the front doors of the school. He tried to open them. They were locked because it was Saturday. Now, here's the same story with commas. The little boy woke up late, jumped down the steps, ran out the door, jumped on his bike, rode to school, parked and locked his bike, and ran to the front doors of the school, tried to open them. They were locked. It was Saturday. Could you feel the difference between those two versions? In the first version, it was slow and relaxed and plodding. It seemed to take forever. In the second version, the commas made it feel more frantic, like the boy was in a hurry. Big difference. The commas added effect. But what about the semicolon? How can it be used for effect? When you see one in the middle of a sentence, it tells you that the two clauses that it's linking have a connection. It's more intimate. Here's a great analogy. The connection you have with your sibling might be separated by a semicolon. The one you have with a stranger might be separated by a period. If you wrote two sentences like this, the little boy realized the door was locked. It was Saturday. Instead, you used a semicolon. It links the two phrases together better. The little boy realized the door was locked. It was Saturday. The second version, with the semicolon, tells you that the doors are locked because it's Saturday. It creates a dramatic effect that isn't there with the period. Then you have the colon. It's usually used to introduce a list of items, but it can be used for dramatic effect as well. It forces the reader to pause, and the second clause can summarize or explain the first clause. Take this sentence, for example. There is one thing you can do for good grades: work hard and study. The first sentence builds to the second, dramatically explaining what you can do for good grades. It means a lot more to you than if the colon wasn't there. It has added emphasis. Finally, let's tackle the dash. A dash can rename, repeat, specify, or amplify what has already been said. It is used to set off information in a dramatic way. Dashes can also be used to add details to a word or phrase, like this. The noise in the classroom was loud. Things being thrown, children crying, utter chaos. The school served pizza, at least that is what they call it, for lunch. See how the phrase utter chaos really stands out because of the dash in the first sentence? And in the second sentence, the dash turns the phrase, at least that is what they call it, into a funny joke, adding the writer's emphasis to the words. That's the writer basically making fun of the school pizza just by using dashes. A pretty cool little piece of punctuation, right? Man, punctuation is cool. As a writer, you can really use it to your advantage to make ordinary sentences extraordinary, give your writing more meaning, and make it really pop. When you read, start to recognize the punctuation used by authors for effect. Once you start, you won't be able to stop. Think about how the punctuation makes you feel, what it tells you, and how it adds to the story. Have fun out there in punctuation land! Exclamation point! Thanks for following Clarendon Learning. Be sure to subscribe. For more free resources, check us out at clarendonlearning.org.